What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Dylan. This is DylanTalksTone. If you like guitar stuff, do me a favor and like and subscribe and hit the bell and all that kind of stuff, because we talk about guitar stuff almost every day of the week here. Today we're going to talk about 5 myths that you should pretty much avoid if guitar playing is something that you really want to enjoy, right? Especially for those of you that are new to the channel or new to guitars, or maybe just new to like diving into the more nerdy stuff. These are 5 things that, while they do factor into how our guitar sounds and how we play and that kind of thing, if you spend too much time nerding out on any one of these things, it ends up being sort of this minutia that you'll get sucked into, and it will honestly take away from the joy of playing guitar. So these 5 myths I personally try to avoid as much as possible when I'm looking at guitar stuff or making choices on what guitar to buy or what mods to do or that kind of stuff. So let's get into those 5 things. Number 1, that you need some kind of fancy vintage tube amp or tube amp in general to get good guitar tone. Obviously, this comes from the idea that at one time, all guitar amps were tube amps, right? That's how they amplified sound. That was kind of how electric guitars first started out. Now, these days, we have a bunch of different options, right? So we'll have, like something like this little Kemper player. These are, this is a professional grade piece of equipment that goes on a pedal board or on the stage by itself. And you can have a bunch of different amp sounds, a bunch of different effects in one thing like this. And this actually models the sound of a traditional tube amp. You have other things like this Princeton Tone Master right here, which it basically looks and functions like a regular amp. And it has a digital modeler in it as well that models a Fender Princeton. But it's a lot lighter, it's cheaper than a tube amp, and you can plug it in and be able to record around your house and things like that. And then for a lot less money and a lot less sort of, investment of everything, time and learning and all that kind of stuff, you have something like the Positive Grid stuff, right? So the Positive Grid Spark 40, the Positive Grid Mini, then there's a little baby Positive Grid Go. I think I've got one of those too. I use this probably more than anything else that I own because it has headphones. I can plug it into my guitar and sit on the couch and play, and it's great and it sounds fun. And is it a vintage tube amp? No. Is it the same thing as a vintage tube amp? This one isn't. You can get pretty close with the Kemper, and this is pretty close as well. But does it even matter? Not really. And here's why. Especially if you're a newer guitar player, chances are there are many folks these days in 2025 who've actually never played through a vintage tube amp. So they don't necessarily have the comparison to make. In fact, some of this stuff is so close that even expert guitar players a lot of times have a hard time telling the difference. Not everybody. Some people can really tell the difference, but others, it as near as makes no difference, is basically the same for the function plus the convenience of being able to record, the convenience of being able to use headphones. I use headphones with this to be able to, we live in an apartment, we live in a house with a neighborhood, like I live in a house with a neighborhood. I can't play a loud tube amp, right? So the practicality of it is super nice, where you can actually just use this digital stuff. And for a lot of us who especially are newer, we may have never used anything but a digital device because we live in 2025. A lot of things are digital these days. Most entry-level guitar amps aren't tube amps. So if you've never really made that comparison, don't stress so much about what you might see on the internet or does this sound legit or whatever. If it sounds good to you and you're having fun playing with it, then it is good. This is the cheapest thing I own, and I play with it all the time, and I have a lot of fun with this thing. So it's just a matter of how much fun you're having with the gear that you have. So don't stress too much about having a tube amp. Now, as you grow and maybe you want to collect and you want to have one because they're kind of cool, they are really cool, then do it. But just don't overthink it. Myth number 2 that I wouldn't get too tied up in. While string gauge makes a difference, we'll talk about why. The myth that we hear a lot is that heavier strings have more tone. You know, you can play with a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 gauge strings. If you buy a entry-level Fender, like a Squier, for example, it's gonna come with 9 gauge strings on it. That's lighter than I like to use, but it's not because I like using 10s. It's not because of tone. It's not because you get better tone with heavier strings. They like the guitar to play easily for entry-level players, so that it plays nicely and easily. That's why they put those 9s on there. And it's easier for them to set the guitar up from the factory that way too. There's a couple of things to go with that. I use 10 to 46s. That's my string choice. But you can use anything. You know, Billy Gibbons and B.B. King, many guitar players use very, very light strings. 7 gauge, 8 gauge. Lots of folks use 9 gauge. Does it mean that a heavier string gives you more tone? The myth comes from how it interacts with the magnetic field and etc. But what you will find is that if you find the right string gauge for you, for your size of hands, for the size of the neck, that gives you the, if you want to start doing bends, that kind of thing, or you do just, you know, mainly chords, your playing style, the setup on the guitar, the height of the action, all those things as you play, you will start to say, you know what, I'd like to try this or that. Whatever you're comfortable with is going to give you the best tone, because the strings and the setup on the guitar is the number one kind of factor in that, because of how you interact. How you interact right here with this fretting hand has a lot to do, and the strength of your picking hand in relation to the strings has a lot to do with your tone. So if you can't play heavy strings, if you're not comfortable on heavy strings, your tone's never going to be good. So just find the string gauge that you are comfortable with and that you can move around on and that you can make progress with as you learn, and don't worry about all those other myths. Don't do it just because you saw it on the internet to put heavier strings on your guitar. Whatever you're comfortable with, whatever the setup on the guitar likes, you kind of come to that middle ground and you end up just playing. And good strings, in my opinion, are strings you don't notice. Number 4 myth that I wouldn't worry about a whole lot is we hear that pickup covers ruin tone. We see a guitar like this, right? And it's got no pickup covers on it. And we think, well, maybe that's because Slash says that it ruins the tone. Versus a guitar like this that has pickup covers on it. And now all of a sudden, do we have less highs? Do we have, or are we missing something because we have covers on it? Don't worry about that a whole lot. Does a cover make a difference to the tone? It can. It can. Especially on less expensive guitars where you're using brass instead of nickel-based metals. It has a lot to do with the engineering on the pickup, but basically the point is this. If your pickups are good, if they sound good to you, then they're good. Don't worry about it. If you have a guitar with no covers and you like how it sounds, then it's fine. If you have a guitar with covers and you like how it sounds, then it's fine. If you take your covers off, is that going to just make the guitar come alive all of a sudden? It depends. Sometimes really inexpensive guitars, like I said, because of the materials that they use, can make a difference. Here at DylanTalksTone, we use materials that and then engineer the pickup as we design the pickup and build it to kind of compensate for the fact that it has a cover on it. So you don't lose anything because we just make it sound good from the ground up. So it just kind of depends. I should mention that most of these things that we're talking, these 5 things that we're talking about today, we have videos on this channel that kind of dive into the details of these things and really get into each of these myths. I'll leave links to as many of these videos as I can find in the description so that you can like really nerd out if you want. But honestly, the point of this video is to tell you not to worry about it. Number 4, you need hotter pickups in your guitar. I'm not getting the sound that I want. I have these pickups and I'm playing with my friends and I can't stand out in a mix. That's a phrase we hear. They're just not loud enough. They don't hit the amp hard enough. What is going on? I need hotter pickups. Here's the thing. If you listen to a lot of the guitar sounds from the 60s and early 70s, those guitars on all that rock sound and all that classic rock sound that you hear, were made with very low output pickups. Not all of it, but for the most part. This set of pickups, for example, is very, very low output. They are made a vintage kind of wind. These are available at our website. Actually, my daughter wound these by hand. And so these are available on the website. They're 7.8K, which is super, super low, which is actually what vintage correct Gibson PAF style stuff from the 50s and 60s were, that everybody like seeks so much. So why do those guitars sound so good and the guitar that you have doesn't stand out in the mix and you want it to be hotter? It has to do with the mid-range. A guitar is actually a vocal instrument, so it has the same sort of frequency peaks as the human voice. And so if we have guitars with very weak mid-range, when we're playing with other guitars, chances are we're going to lose that, right? So the guitar doesn't need to, the pickup doesn't need to be hotter, it just needs to have a good wide frequency response that can be heard in a mix, typically with a strong mid-range and nice clarity. So at DylanTalksTone, that's what we strive for. When we make pickups, that's what I really, really strive for, is those two things, because I think it fixes those problems. The cool part is that retaining a lower output pickup, you can actually end up being louder because you're being heard more, and you get a wider dynamic range, no mud, right? Nice clarity, and it all works out. So lower output pickups aren't always the answer, but it's where I would start if you're trying to find something that's missing. The higher output pickups that you go, without getting too in the weeds here, some of the things that you like can start to go away. Number 5, and this is probably the biggest one of all of them, and that is the whole tone wood debate. That the wood that an electric guitar is made from is a factor in the tone of the guitar. It's an age-old thing. People will argue about it in the comments. Even though that is not the point of this video, there will be people that argue about it in the comments of this video because it's just kind of a thing that happens, right? Because everybody has an opinion on it. Does the wood of an electric guitar, what it's made of? So this one's alder. The one I just showed you over there, that one is mahogany and maple. Let's see, this one is mahogany also. Do those wood materials have a factor in the tone of the electric guitar? We know they do in acoustic instruments, but does it affect an electric instrument? That's a big argument, right? And it's one that honestly can drive people apart when it comes to playing guitar and in the guitar community. Now, I'm not going to give you what you should think on this, whether you agree with it or not. Do you think it does? Do you think it doesn't? That's not the point. The point is, don't worry about it. Every guitar has a flavor, a sound, a look, a feel, the way it vibrates in your hands when you play it, the feel of the finish, the look of it. I mean, I love the look of this guitar. You might not. He's pretty polarizing. Doesn't matter. You know, I like pink guitars too, so it's whatever. So that matters more. Whether you like the guitar or not matters more than what it's made of. No matter the fancy wood that a guitar is made of, if you don't like it, you're not going to play it. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. The reason I bring this up is because, especially for newer guitar players, you're going to see, especially in the entry-level guitar market, more and more wood materials and building materials that aren't the traditional ones, right? So we have alder, there's maple, there's mahogany, that's maple mahogany. I've got an ash body in there. This one's mahogany. Those are very traditional building materials since the beginning of electric guitars. And so rosewood fretboards, maple fretboards, etc. As we get further along in history, you're going to find, down to today in the 2025, you're going to find that a lot of these materials are changing, right? So they're using different woods to make electric guitars. And some folks will assign a tonal value to these guitars. So they'll say poplar's not as good as, they'll say basswood's not as good as, they'll say, you know, it doesn't matter what the wood is if it's not one of those traditional ones, that it's not as good as something else. If the guitar sounds good, feels good, plays good, looks good, is good, no matter what. And because we're going to see more and more, even creeping up into pricier guitars, we're going to see more alternative woods and materials being used just because of availability and cost and etc. So don't stress about it too much. No matter how you feel about how it affects a guitar, don't stress about it. If you see a guitar on a wall, don't let what it's made of be the deciding factor in whether you want that guitar or not. Now, if you're a designer of guitars, if you're really diving into something specific, if you're trying to copy something very specific for aesthetic purposes or for historical purposes, maybe you know that Keith's Macabre Telly is made out of this particular material and you want to copy it because you kind of want to make one for yourself, that's different because you really enjoy that stuff, right? But for those of us that just want to play guitars, don't stress about it a whole lot. So there's your 5. It's not to say that none of this stuff really matters, right? We have videos, we have 1,500 videos or 2,000 videos for over 11 years really diving into the super nerdiness of all of this stuff. That's what we do at DylanTalksTone, right? So I'm not saying that none of it matters, because all of it is a contributing factor to how the guitar sounds. String gauge, the feel of a guitar, like the hotness of the pickups, all those things are factors, right? But if you just want to play guitar and enjoy guitar, don't stress about each of those things individually so much. Look at your entire package and how you enjoy the instrument. How do you play? What do you play? What is your other gear? Look at your entire rig, zoom out and look at everything and decide if you're getting the results that you want. Then start looking at individual things. But before you're really getting nerdy about this stuff, enjoy playing guitar first. That's what I would say. And then come hang out on the channel and we'll talk about stuff that's really nerdy and not so nerdy. And, we'll just talk guitar stuff. That's what we do. Hit the likes button, the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments what you think about this stuff. Please be nice. That would be cool. And we'll see you in the next video.